What's up, everybody? Natalie here, and I saw this insane post on the Am I the Asshole subreddit. It's about veganism, it's about family dynamics, and all this crazy stuff, so I wanted to do a little reaction to it. I'm 32 male and my wife is 33 female. We've been married for 8 years and have a 12-year-old son together. About 6 years ago, my wife decided to go vegan. She was sent the documentary Dominion by a vegan friend of hers, and ever since has said non-vegan food is revolting and refuses to eat it. After a long conversation, I agreed to go vegetarian and be vegan in the house and around her, which she was happy with. She also decided our son should be vegan, which after seeing a dietitian, I also agreed with. Things have been fine with this arrangement until a few months ago when I began finding wrappers from non-vegan candy and even burgers from McDonald's in my son's school bag, which he had been buying with chore money. I had a conversation with my son and he confessed he felt lonely and excluded eating vegan around his friends and that they always had much better candy than he did and it wasn't fair. I decided I didn't want him spending his pocket money on snacks and throwing out the vegan snacks we actually bought him instead of buying games, etc. It made no sense. But I also know the way my wife feels about non-vegan products, so I began buying my son what he wanted on our way to football practice instead. Long story short, my wife recently found out what has been going on and completely flipped out. She called me an animal abuse enabler and a few other names and said I was corrupting our son. Now she is not speaking to me. Our son panicked and told her I had bought the snacks for him and he didn't know they weren't vegan. I don't blame him for that, he just doesn't want to be in trouble with mom. Am I the asshole here? So there's a lot to dig into there. First of all, I want to say that I love that she went vegan because of Dominion. That's also what kind of made me vegan. There were a few other things before, but that really changed the way I saw the issue and made me want to get active for the animals. So it's great that she watched Dominion and had conversations with her family and that her husband became vegetarian. Now, it is unfortunate that he became vegetarian, not vegan, and in the comments he reveals that he would rather be an omnivore. He hates factory farming, but doesn't have a problem with killing animals if they have a happy life. We've all heard that line of thinking. Of course, it's ridiculous, but I'm not gonna get into that here. The point is that he was never fully on board with veganism. Then there's the son. He also reveals in the comments later that the wife showed her son Dominion when he was 6 years old. He had nightmares for weeks. I also had nightmares for weeks, so I totally get that. I'm not sure what the correct age to show kids Dominion is. I think 6 might be a little young. Obviously, if they can't watch Dominion, they shouldn't be consuming these animal products, but maybe showing that kind of footage at such a young age could have some sort of backfire effect, or it could desensitize them to this. This could be, I'm sure there are a lot of reasons why the son is choosing to not be vegan right now, but maybe this early exposure to the footage will make that same footage have less of effect on him later. So the son starts buying this stuff in secret. We all know the peer pressure that you feel when you're 12 years old. I don't really remember being 12 years old that much, but I remember that it sucked and I hated it, and I definitely did things to fit in that I wouldn't have ever done. I would buy these stupid Aeropostale shirts that I didn't even like just because that's what people were wearing. I would listen to Outkast, which I didn't really like. Don't come after me in the comments. I'm sorry I have bad taste in music. I just was never really into Outkast. So there are things that you do when you're 12 that don't fully align with your values, and it seems like her son has gotten into that. Now, he says that it's not fair that he has to eat vegan when his friends can consume animal products. Now, this is kind of the crux of this issue with the post, right? Is that when people go vegan, it has to be their decision. You can't force anyone to be vegan. As much as people accuse us of forcing them to be vegan, you can't actually force someone to be vegan, and that's what this woman is experiencing right now. Her son, who she thought was happy being vegan, has now become a non-vegan animal abuser, which she hates. So let's talk about, is this guy the asshole here? Now, I was talking to my fiance about it. He's also vegan, very passionate, and he said, absolutely, the guy's the asshole. It's insane that he lied to his wife. He shouldn't have been buying his son those products. And I think there's a bit more nuance there. Yes, the guy shouldn't have lied to his wife, and he was wrong for buying animal products. Absolutely, no one should ever be buying animal products, I don't think. but his wife had created a hostile environment where it was unable to be discussed. So when you're thinking about the type of relationship you want to be in, for me, I think that honesty is really important. I think creating safe spaces is really important. I think that you should be allowed to have dialogue, especially with your children. I don't have kids. I'm not planning on having kids. But if your kids are afraid to be honest with you, that could be a problem. I think this could have been handled a lot better. I think he should have told his wife, as scary as it would be for that conversation to happen, he should have told his wife at least what was going on, and then they could have addressed the issue from there. The kid says he doesn't like the vegan candy. I don't know what kind of vegan candy she was giving him. I love a lot of types of vegan candy, but yeah, sure, there's bad vegan candy, there's bad non-vegan candy. She should make sure that he likes the food that she's giving him. One thing that this post reminds me of is that I was having a conversation with Very Vegan Mom one point, or maybe I just heard her talking about it. She was saying that for her son, she makes sure that he has a vegan option for everything that his friends are eating around them. So if they go to a party and there's going to be cake, she will get a vegan cake for her son to enjoy. She makes sure that he likes it, because that feeling of exclusion is especially strong in children. It's actually still strong in adults. That's why most people are too weak to even go vegan. They don't have the social courage, which is absolutely insane. But that's something that we need to take into account, especially with younger people. You want to make sure that they have tasty vegan food at all times. Now I want to get into the issue of whether or not vegans should have children. Now this woman, I can kind of exclude from this discussion because she had this child before she went vegan 6 years before, so veganism wasn't part of her life when she was making the decision to have a child. But for any vegans watching now, if you are thinking about having children, you have to realize that there's a strong chance that your child will not be vegan. Do you want to bring someone into the world who might exploit and kill and murder and confine and torture animals? Or do you want to adopt or not have children and not bring any new life into the world? For me, the choice is clear, not only because of the vegan thing, but also because I've never really wanted children, just not in me, I guess. But I think that's something people should really take seriously. You'll hear vegans argue that there need to be more vegans in the world, so if they have a child, then that'll be one more vegan in the world. But I think that's insane, because people are much more determined by their peer groups than by their parents. That being said, parents do have some amount of control over their children's peer groups. You can't tell your kid who to be friends with and who not to be friends with, but I do know this one vegan kid who goes to a primarily vegan school, which I think is awesome. If you do want your kid to be vegan and stick with it, put them around other vegan children who they like. Now, that's probably easier said than done, especially if you're somewhere where you don't even know any other vegans. You can really only do the best you can do. But this is something I talk about a lot when I'm talking to people about starting to do outreach, is that when they start, they try it out on their family, and a lot of times it doesn't go well. That's because our family is the hardest for us to influence, and just because they're related to us doesn't mean they're any more likely to go vegan. So that's why I always tell people, don't focus on your family, focus your activism on other people, on strangers, on people who may be sympathetic to veganism, or doing pressure campaigns or legislative work. There's a million different types of activism you can do. I'll link a video below that has different types of activism for everyone. But this over focus on your family is harmful, and it can create a lot of tension in your interpersonal relationships. That's clearly what's happened here. Now, when the husband said that his wife flipped out and had a tantrum, we don't really know what happened. Maybe she wasn't that bad, maybe she was. Either way, she came across as angry to him, and I think that is a problem. Vegans are already stereotyped as unreasonable and angry. We don't want to play into that stereotype. When I first went vegan, fresh after seeing Dominion, I was incredibly angry. I'm still very angry when I think about what's happening to animals, but I think it's important to use that anger inside you and not let it come out. Anger, generally, I like this definition of it, is a way to signal as strongly as you can to the other party you're capable of violence. Anger is a precursor to violence. The more time I've spent around the organization Direct Action Everywhere and Wayne Shung, I think they're doing great work. They really emphasize nonviolence at every single event. I think nonviolence is important. I understand anger isn't quite violence, but it is a precursor, and I don't think we should be threatening violence or anything like that. We want to be a nonviolent movement. Maybe violence is necessary sometimes, but I think in general it's best to avoid it. Anger also is a contract you make with yourself to be in physical and mental and emotional turmoil until reality changes. So that's what this woman is doing. You know, she's putting herself into this horrible emotional state that she can't control the behavior of her husband and her son, so she's going to suffer until that changes, and that's unfortunate. I think as I've been active for longer and longer, as I've had more conversations, as I've started doing more work away from just doing street outreach, I've leaned on anger less and less. I'm reminded of the time after the Animal Liberation March in New York City last year when the guy was eating the kebab in front of this woman and she was freaking out, yelling, screaming about how small his penis is. And of course that reinforces the stereotype that vegans are angry and unreasonable, and so does this post. So I want us to let our anger fuel our action, but not let it come out at others. If you can achieve that, and the ways that I've been able to do that recently is really just through breath work and kind of feeling the anger deeply and releasing it. It's almost hard to explain, but it is beneficial. And I think that within all of us, we have a reservoir, and that's made up of this animal suffering that we face every day. And we know what it's like, and we know how horrible it is for the animals, and it weighs on us, it weighs us down. And that's where a lot of this anger comes from. But beneath that, there's also a reservoir of strength, of hope, of a resource that we can tap into to use to help others, to be compassionate, and to get the message across in a way that isn't harmful. And I don't think that this woman is tapping into that. I think she's obviously blindsided and angry, and it's unfortunate, and it's coming out in all the wrong ways. So she's created this hostile environment in her home, and when you do have that hostile environment at home, it makes you an ineffective activist. It's hard to be mentally and physically healthy when you can't even relax in your own home. So I would ask any vegans watching this to take that anger away from the people they're living with if they're not vegan, and try to channel it into something more positive for the world. If you need help with that, Vistopia is a great book as well. Also, anyone who is vegan and has children, I think you should try to imagine what it would be like if your kid decides that they want to abuse animals, because you need to be prepared for that possibility. It's obviously, I can't give the exact probability, but it seems like there's a high likelihood that your child will not be vegan by the time they're an adult. So you need to seriously consider that possibility. And if or when it happens, try not to lash out and react so negatively, because most people don't respond well to shame and negativity. Some people do, but most people don't. So that should not be the first tactic that you try. Let's look at some of the comments and see how stupid they are. Not the asshole. I think my answer at this point would be our son is old enough to decide what he wants to eat and what his dietary preferences are. If we put him into a situation where he feels he has to hide things from us, that's on us. If your wife is confronting him about this in any kind of intimidating way or trying to make him feel guilty with the same phrases she's using with you, I would prioritize your son and his needs and well-being. Shit like this can cause a lot of problems. So I disagree strongly with the first part of that comment, because obviously veganism is more than a dietary choice. It is, not harming animals as far as practicable and possible. It's giving animals rights. That being said, the second part that he wrote, I think, is pretty good. Like I said, I don't know much about parenting, but I think that intimidating your children is probably bad, and keeping that open and honest communication line is important to well-being and future health. When people are ready to make changes, they will. You can't change anyone. Unfortunately, I would love to make everyone see that animals have enough moral value to not stab them in the throat, but I do not have that power, and trying to exert that power that you don't have is futile. Let me know what you guys thought of this. I love reacting to Reddit stuff. I think I'm going to do sort of a weekly Reddit stream where I can react to the top posts from vegan Reddit. That'll probably start in a few months because I'm going to be really busy for the next couple months. Details about that on my community post. So let me know what you thought. If you thought this story was totally insane, if you take the husband side, I would hope that you don't, or if you take the wife's side, what would you do in this situation? What do you think about vegans having kids? Drop it down below, and I'll see you in the next video.